Hello and welcome to Sew Like a Pro. My name is Jacqueline Dr. Johnson and I would like to show you today how to make a corset. I'm working on a wedding dress, and inside the wedding dress is a custom corset to fit the bride to help show off that silhouette. God created man in his image, but he fashioned women, so we have that hourglass shape and we want to enhance it. So it's many ways you can finish your corset. This one I did with a double edge stitch on the outside. The inside of it is lined, and I have all these beautiful jewels that you can finish the edge with. I did just a little bias edge. It's the inside of the lining. You can trim it with this beautiful lace along the edge. I had these way oversized hooks. You can hook and close it up in the back. You can buy rhinestone appliques that applique those on. You can finish with these cute rhinestone buttons down the front. It could just be fake. They don't have to operate for real. Or you can buy some loop tape. This is stretch, but they have a woven one also. And you can buy the stretch tape and you can button it up the back. You can make your own tape. Cut it on the bias, turn it. You can make loops yourself. This boning is on the inside, so the loops would be made according to your button size. Stitch them all down, put them in the correct place. Or you can buy rat tail. It's called rat tail. You can make your own loops, and then you can lace it up the back. Or you can use a separating zipper and zip it up the back. So it's up to you, whichever way you want to finish it. Now this pattern is Simplicity pattern number 5006, sizes 14 through 20. And of course you probably can get it bigger or smaller. And so you want to measure on yourself your bust, your waist, and your hips. This is like 9 inches. I think maybe this is like 4 or 5 inches below the waist. But on the back of the pattern envelope, I cut a size 14, and the 14 is a 36 bust, 28 waist, and 38-inch hip. And then the back neck to waist measurement is 16.5. So I suggest that you cut yours in a muslin, fit it, make the alterations, and then cut it in your fashion fabric. So I'm using just a regular long staple polyester thread, and this is bridal satin on this one. And then it's just polyester satin, of course, on the inside. And I'm going to show you how to sew the boning into the seams. So what I did was I went on it and stitched the one like they did on the pattern. So on the pattern, they stitched the two pieces, all the pieces together. I notched it really, really well. And on the outside, they just did one top stitch. I used my foot as my guide. I lined the fabric up right along the edge of the foot, right along the seam. Press it, clip it, notch it, trim it, follow all the directions, and then top stitch it. Then I went back and I stage stitch along the entire garment. The stay stitch means it's going to stay. So I do it on number 4. My sewing seam allowance is 5/8, so I'm going to do it on number 4. And then on my princess seams, it's very imperative that you do a basting stitch and then sew the pieces together. I'm like, where's this going? You know what happened was I stitched this together yesterday and it was too dark. It didn't come out good. So I was like, do it again. So then I brought the machine upstairs and I put it together again. I forgot to cut on the lights. So I was like, oh, do it again. So you know what? I really love you guys, because this is my 3rd try. So now I want to do a few stitches forward. I want to back stitch. I want to make sure that I do this to the letter. Match up all the notches. Exactly 5/8 inch seam allowance. If I need to pull my basting thread to line them up so I can get this to fit perfect, look, line right back up at my knot. So take your time, it's a lot of seams in here so you can get a really, really good fit. Now, I started out learning how to sew on my own, in a factory, and then to scoop. So that's why I sew really fast, and that's why I generally sew without pins. So then we back stitch. And what I try and do is trim all my threads as I sew. Get this little snipper, it's so easy, help you clean up stuff really, really fast. Now, you can see before, I already went and pressed these seams all open. But now I'm going to sew in my boning. So, you can buy all kind of different bonings, but when you sew this one in, I want to sew it right along the seam. This edge match right up to my seam. And then I'm going to stitch with the boning still in the casing. I'm going to stitch right along this seam. I'm going to cut at the top and the bottom. And then I'll adjust this to get rid of the plastic, the width of the seam allowance, so I don't sew over that when I go to join the two together. So, the other tip, if you sewing and your needle keeps snagging your fabric, the needle is damaged and you need to take it out and just get rid of it. Just don't continue to do that. It's a bad needle. Now you see this is already clipped at the waist. I already clipped everything. I notched everything really, really well because I wanted to look good. And it's easier if it's notched well. It's easy to match everything up. You won't put the wrong pieces together because the notches don't match. So here, I'm going to cut it. So I don't pre-cut it. I just cut it when I need it, where I need it. I'm going to leave this needle down, turn it around, and then I'm going to stitch on the other side and stitch back up the other side. So I hope that this light is good, that you can see everything really well. Remember, my husband bought this tripod. I said, honey, I need you to record for me. I was like, I'll buy you a tripod. I hope that you can see everything really well. So here, I'm going to take and I'm going to get rid of like 3/4 of an inch. So I can make sure it don't hit my needle. You don't want to be breaking a lot of needles. So the top and the bottom. Get rid of 3/4. Now they do have metal boning, all kind of boning. So you just decide what you need and what you want for your project. Okay, now I want to join these two together. My outside is the cranberry and my inside is gold. Now, if I was going to put this trim on, I would have this trim already stitched on the outside garment. I would have this already stitched on, and I showed you how to sew rhinestone onto a garment. The previous video before this, if I wanted these, I would have these appliqued on already. If I was going to put the loops on, I had the loops stitched down the back already. Or if I was going to put a zipper in, I had my zipper in already. So we're just going to say whichever way you want to finish this is up to you. So now we want to match these up. Again, I told you I don't really sew with pins, but sometimes you do need them. So I want to make sure all of the seams are matching and lining up. And this is off a teeny bit. So what I like to do is take a straight pin. Because I have my stay stitch in there, I can go in and take this pin and stick it right in that thread. And pull it and ease this in a little bit to make sure that everything matches. We want everything to match. And you want to make sure that boning is not in the way. You do not want to stitch over that and damage the needle. And believe me, you can tell every time you hit it, it's going to make that a serious thump. So you know what to do. So for time's sake, after you stitch the entire thing together, the entire top. Trim half of the seam allowance away, notch where you need to notch, especially you need to notch along the curves. Now you know a clip is like this and a notch is like that. So we always notch along the curves, clip along the straight seams. Trim half of this away. Now I want to edge stitch or understitch, onto my lining. The edge stitch is permanent, but it doesn't show on the outside of the garment. It helps to pull everything and make it lay flat. It pulls it and makes it lay flat toward the inside. So what I do is I pull it a little bit while I'm sewing to make sure, and try again not to sew on that boning, because if you do, you're not going to be able to flip it out. It's going to poke and stand right out in that spot. So this is how we do the understitch. Because then when you press it, it goes right up to that very edge, but you can't see the lace. Nice and flat, beautiful. You can see I pulled that in and eased that in. It looks beautiful. Now, after I do that at the top, then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go back and flip it and line up the bottoms and do the same thing. So I would stay stitch all of my lining first. Have all my boning stitched in. Trim them all down to the right size. Sew them together, and then I would trim and clip, notch where it's needed, and then understitch on the bottom on the lining. It's going to be a little bit more difficult because the top is already stitched together. So any comments or any questions, let me know. Any suggestions? I'm going to try real soon to do the mermaid skirt. So may God bless all your sewing projects.